All right, welcome again to Coding and Cocktails, Urology. Today, the topic is water jet ablation of the prostate, also known as aquablation. And our drink will have a drink with tonic water in it. Oh, that was a great theme, Dr. Ubroy. That's how we can tie the two together. So, as always, Dr. J. Ubroy, urologist and I would say mixologist extraordinaire and coding specialist, Dr. Jonathan Rubenstein, also urologist. So this will be a fun episode. Are you excited?
I'm very excited. I think this is, water. Water is important to urologists. You know,
Water's
so
water
I
is
think
important.
let's learn about some different things that can be done with water.
Okay. Well, I'll start, listen, in 2026, there's a new code for water jet ablation of the prostate. There's a lot of different types of treatments for BPH, men with enlarged prostates. A lot of them will use electrocautery or or steam or that heat of some source. This is a unique procedure that uses the power of water to get rid of prostate tissue. So ablation of the tissue using this high pressure water jet. Again, January 2026 says what's called a Category 1 code. Really important to understand both the procedure and the steps to make sure you're coding it accurately. Dr. Ubor, you want me to tell you about tonic water in cocktails?
Yeah, so we're going to learn a little bit about what I think is actually one of the greatest kind of I'd call it a vibe cocktail because you see a lot of these like spritzes out now. People are drinking Aperol spritz. It's all over Instagram. This was like the original spritz, and what you're going to learn with we're going to go through here is really the fascinating history of the gin and tonic cocktail. And I think it plays off well. Like Jonathan said, you need to understand what's going on with an aqua ablation to code it properly. You need to understand the components of a gin and tonic to get maximal enjoyment from this cocktail.
That's a great introduction. Well, listen, let's start with talking about gin. You want
Gin is
to,
amazing. I never knew that there was something called a gin craze. And so basically, gin has been around for a very long time. And like many spirits, it was created by monks who were basically like the early doctors who were trying to find ways to treat people with medicine. And so they used something called juniper and they distilled a spirit out of this. The modern gin was also made in Europe and around the area of the Netherlands. But gin really took off once it came to England and in colonial times. So there was a guy named William of Orange who was, I guess, a Dutch king that became took the English throne, and that's where gin came in. But there was a time where the main spirit being drank in England was brandy. And then between the wars between the Royal Crown and France, there was a need to get away from French brandy, and gin really stepped up. So what we have in the picture there is, I mean, a scene that could be outside my urology office at a certain time, but it's not drugs, heroin, fentanyl. It was gin. In those days, really, gin was thought to be like the biggest problem. And I think I read somewhere uh, 5 or 6 acts of parliament in the late 1600s, early 1700s, just dealing with overconsumption of gin and how they were trying to regulate it. It was essentially, the pandemic of those times.
well, apparently juniper berry, and the reason I believe monks use it was because they believe there is a healing power to it. And there was something about it, how people would use it against the Black Plague and would put it in their masks. And there was supposed to be, whether it's, again, I never want to say that anybody who's taking something and using it as a medicine can ever be wrong, especially if it goes back, you know, a thousand years. But so I think that there was also a feeling that the juniper was somehow very healing to a lot of people, and therefore there was some healing power they believed to be in gin. Well, tell me about tonic water.
Yeah, it was like right. So then there's another thing that happened is that malaria. became very big at certain times in history. And there has been a lot of research about indigenous people, especially in South America, who were using the bark of this tree, the Chichona tree, which would really be used to fight off malaria. And so from that bark, the compound they'd isolated was called quinine. And so eventually, once people figured this out, quinine was another one of the health crazes. And so in 1858, the first tonic water was made. And, actually, current day tonic water still has quinine in it. So, if you are feeling a little under the weather, maybe, it could be malaria. Have a gin and tonic.
So now we have the healing powers of juniper that's in gin. We have the malaria protectant
Right.
of quinine or quinine, which is in our tonic water. Sounds like a heck of a drink, especially before a lot of modern medicines.
Right. We're missing one other thing that ends up happening. India. And what happens is you need a place where there's malaria and there's gin. And that's where the gin and tonic comes from because the British had sent their soldiers as part of their colonization to India. And British colonial rule is really where the gin and tonic cocktail that we know of today. So this is a really cool poster I found, 1810. It actually has the standard recipe of a gin and tonic up at the top there. Um, and then this is a funny quote from Winston Churchill that the gin and tonic have saved more Englishmen lives, minds than all the doctors in the empire.
Oh,
So maybe
but
he was right.
maybe he's
Um,
right, especially when you're in India to prevent to help prevent against malaria. I love the glass that they
exactly.
used. This 1810 glass that's not what we always will be using today.
Right. Oh, but I will be.
You will
Because
be.
as you know, I have a love for Indians. I mean, I am one. But anyway, so I think so. What we're going to do, much akin to some of the other things, we've taken the coding thing, and there's obviously some educational component to this. But to make it fun, you're going to make a gin and tonic, and I'm going to make a gin and tonic, and we'll talk about the differences.
Well, you want to, before we do that, you want to talk
Oh,
about the
yeah.
different types of
Yeah, this
gins?
is something that always comes up. If you go to a restaurant or bar and you ask for a gin and tonic, I always say, "Oh, what kind of gin do you want?" And it's very hard. It's kind of like there's a ton of gins out there, and I think the standard ones that you and I see in the stores around here, those are typically the London dry gins. But you will find some artisanal gins. Even I was somewhere last night and I had a barrel aged gin and tonic. I didn't realize it's kind of like you're not supposed to do that with the barrel aged gin and put it with tonic because some sort of faux pas. But anyway, the typical gins, your Tanquerays, Belvederes, things that we have most available are in the like London Dry or Old Tom variety. And then your Navy Strength is going to be a stronger gin, mostly for sipping. And then will see some Plymouth gins, which are a little smoother and only made in Plymouth, England, not Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Well, I have learned all this. So you want to talk about how to make a gin and tonic?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's essentially a two ingredient cocktail. So there's, those two things have to be there. But all the riffs are really whatever you want to do. Um, so probably in the last 20 years, or maybe even a little bit less, everyone, I should have brought it. I have the standard yellow Canada Dry tonic water, which I'm sure everyone has seen. And that's the tonic water. There's only tonic water on the shelves for many, many years. But there are now artisanal tonic waters, and both of us, I think, are going to use the same one in our cocktail. But even this one that we're using, which is a brand called Fever Tree, has four or five different tonic waters that you can experiment around with. And then obviously, as you saw, you can experiment around with the gin. So it's really dealer's choice. It's a great cocktail. But I said, to me, it's more of like a vibe because in the summertime, and particularly the one that I'm going to make, maybe you can go to the next slide. I'm going to feature what's called a Spanish gin tonic, or as they say, yin tonic. And the reason I'm doing that is that it reminds me of Europe, of being in Spain, where you get, you know, enormous size gin and tonic. I mean, the glass that I picked for this is huge, and it's more of it's for the aroma. It's about the things you're putting into it. In some ways, I'd say the gin is a little bit of a secondary actor in my gin and tonic. Now, in yours, I think the gin is really the what you're doing it for.
Right. So my gin, which I have, my house gin, as I'll call it, which is the Hendrix, which a very popular gin. I think this size comes from one of the big box, you know, warehouse stores. Certainly plenty of Hendrix gin in a bottle this size. Hendrix gin, small batch, handcrafted, 11 fine botanicals. And their claim is that it's oddly confused or unexpectedly infused with cucumbers and rose petals. Um, and they call it a most iconoclastic gin. So very standard. I'm sure there's a lot of people that have the Hendrix.
So and the Hendrix is made in England somewhere, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I've got something called the Botanist, and I also got this somewhere around here, probably at the wine merchant. But this is actually I didn't realize it. It's a Scottish gin. It's made in Scotland. So we'll see. I don't know.
I apologize. Hendrix distilled and bottled in Scotland.
Oh, okay.
There
Well,
we
we're
go.
all in the same place.
So we're
At least yours is about it appears mine was also something happened to it in New York, New York.
I think that's where it gets imported. I think they have somebody who
Yeah.
imports it in.
Yeah.
That lands on there.
Anyway, I'm at 40% here.
This is 44%
Okay.
alcohol by volume.
So are we using the same tonic also?
Well, the one that again that I have in house is a Fever Tree premium
Yeah.
tonic water. But this quinine's from Central Africa. I know that I believe that some comes from South America. This one's from Central Africa. It does include the quinine, and it has sugars and citric acid. I'm sure to make it a little more palatable than just quinine in water, as maybe it started out with.
Yeah, mine is called is yours premium Indian tonic water?
I just have premium,
Yeah. Well, I
non-Indian
mean, like I
maybe.
said, as an Indian, I feel like I have to have the Indian
Okay.
tonic water.
And,
So do
and
you
you have a garnish? Are you throwing a little lime, a little wedge,
let
a
me
little
show you how
orange, a
I
little
make this.
lemon?
I'm going to make this drink for you because this is important. How you do this. So in the Spanish gin and tonic, and I think this should work here. Okay, so here's our setup here. So when I'm making cocktails, and you've been here when we made cocktails, it's a very nice setup. But the key is the preparation. It's essentially like doing surgery, right? I mean, you need to prepare for your case. And in this case, the flavors that I really like in a gin and tonic, I really enjoy lemon over lime for a gin and tonic. I really enjoy cucumbers, and I like big pieces of fruit and things in there. So basically, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a slice of lemon here, and I'm going to build this in my glass here. Now, the other thing that's important in a gin and tonic. So, like we said, we're using a very big glass here. So, this glass is basically half the size of my very large head. Now, again, dilution is the key to any cocktail. So we're going to use ice. Now, this is a urology podcast, right? So you need balls of ice. Okay. So one ball in, two balls, two balls of ice. Now, these are actually baseball ice molds, I believe available on Amazon. But they're an excellent choice for a urology cocktail. So lemon goes in, in, cucumbers. Now, there's one thing that you don't want it all to be fruit. So you want something to balance it out. So what I have here is a sprig of rosemary. But this rosemary, actually, I grew this in my garden, and it's been sitting in the house for a while because it's now cold outside. So what we're going to do to really get something interesting going on with the rosemary is we're going to actually just run it very quickly through a little flame just to really get it warmed up and heated up. So that's a simple way to get your rosemary. You can also slap it against your hands and do all these things. And then, really the key to this cocktail is start pouring the gin and then start thinking about something else. I'm thinking about how many patients I have tomorrow. I'm not really paying attention to how much gin I'm putting in there because you need a good amount. This is a big glass, and the last thing you really need to be doing is making another one of these cocktails. So make yourself one, let the dilution and all this happen, and then you're good. And so then I'll go in with my tonic, and I'm going to use the whole bottle, and that's made, and then just a little squeeze of the lemon. An appropriate bartender would have something to stir this with, not me. I have a knife, and that's my drink.
Excellent job. I used my standard glass.
Yeah,
I do have the square shaped ice cubes. I do have a round ice cube. I did not bring it out this time. I forgot that it was a urology podcast. I'll make sure to do a better job next time
right.
and
Two, and
the
make sure you
ball
got two,
shaped ice.
two, two balls.
Two balls.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
So
that sounds like
anyway,
well,
cheers.
cheers.
Yeah, gin and tonic, Spanish style.
Save
Cool.
some of that for me the next time I'm over.
There probably will be some left, though. My wife is around, so she
Okay.
could probably take care of it.
Well, listen, the reason we're here is not only
Yes.
talk about tonic water and the importance of it, and I think we've all learned quite a bit about that, but I want to talk about water therapy for the prostate. What a transition. So, aquablation is the currently commercially available water jet therapy of the prostate. When codes are created, they're supposed to be generic so that any technology that uses the same concept can use that code. But right now, there's only one producer of this water jet ablation. So most people know it as aquablation therapy. So water jet therapy, it's again, transurethral approach. It means it goes down and through the prostate through our natural channels. Robotic assisted, the machine itself is hooked up to a robot. We use the robot itself through the computer to plan out what tissue is going to be ablated from the inside of the prostate gland, and then the computer will follow the plan that's being created during the procedure itself, which is monitored. And usually they do two passes through to get rid of all this extra prostate tissue. When coding for aquablation therapy, once again, the whole point is that everything that is typically done during a procedure is included. There's all these people who will do a cystoscopy or dilate, part of the urine channel or cauterize a blood vessel or evacuate out any tissue from the inside of the bladder. And those all have unique codes, CPT codes. But since it's typical, it's a normal part of the procedure to need to dilate the urethra to get the tube in to after the ablation itself, do all the planning, ultrasound, to go in and cauterize blood vessels, evacuate any clots or tissue that's in the bladder. That is all included in the procedure, will not be reported separately. So, as I said, about all the stuff that is included, which is typically done during a procedure, the goal is to use one CPT code. That's the goal of when these codes are created. So the description in the parenthetical means the coding instructions of the new code for January 2026, 52597. Transurethral, that's the approach. Robotic assisted, because it hooks it up to the robot. Water jet resection of the prostate. We use the water, high pressure water to ablate the prostate tissue, which includes any intraoperative planning that's done, ultrasound guidance, controlling of any postoperative bleeding, all included, cystoscopy, evacuation of clots. And with most of these types of procedures, where there are TURP type procedures and the such, it has this statement, includes vasectomy, meatotomy, cystourethropy, urethral calibration, dilation, and internal urethrotomy if or when performed. Now, historically, the reason that it says vasectomy, I know we get all those complaints about why does it say vasectomy? Vasectomy is done, to for a fertility procedure that has nothing to do with the TURP. Historically, decades ago, urologists used to do a prophylactic vasectomy at the time of doing a TURP procedure. They thought it reduced the risk of epididymitis. and bacteria going backwards into the epididymis. So a lot of people would do that at the time. So when these codes are created, they say, okay, if it's typical to do a vasectomy to prevent postoperative complications, then it's included. And so people don't realize the historical part of it, and they just say it's not fair. What if the patient wants a vasectomy while getting their TURP done anyways? The rare case that that actually happens, you can't report it separately. And so all the things, the dilation of the urethra is all included. There's what's called a parenthetical, which again is coding instructions. Basically, do not report this procedure if doing, if you do have to do a TURP or you have to do cauterization, an ultrasound, transurethral resection of a bladder neck, or transurethral resection of residual prostate tissue. That's all included in the code itself. So now we have an idea of how to code for water jet resection of the prostate, what it includes, what it doesn't include. And we know the importance and the nuances of how to code for it, just as we know the importance of nuances of our life-saving, especially all the British in India,
Yes.
tonic
And
water with
and the history.
with our quinine in it,
Right.
quinine in it,
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I
or
mean,
gin.
the history of urology has many of these things that we don't learn about, and so I don't think I ever knew about the doing the vasectomy at the time of a TURP. Maybe in your training you learned it since you're older than I.
Much, much,
Just
much
a
old.
couple, not
But
that
you
much.
see, but by when creating these codes, it's important to know the history of why the codes are written a certain way, so that nobody who then complains about them afterwards, if they don't know the history, then we're doomed to repeat it down the road. So again, understanding this is that when people come up to me and will complain about this code and that code, I'll say this is the reason we do it, and that's part of coding and making sure we're doing it right. And just like anything else, getting the correct coding is so important so you can get appropriately paid for the work that you do. Nobody, tries to deny payment. Nobody gets feeling offended if they don't realize they're not getting paid for something that they think they should pay for when they're not going to get paid for it anyways. And just making sure that the whole system works right. It's really important we understand the codes and what they involve.
Yeah, and it's important to know that the gin and tonic was, I think, the original spritz. And who needs Aperol when you've got such a great drink?
And I'm looking forward to lighting some herbs on fire for my next time
Yes.
that I'm
Yeah, no, I highly recommend it. It really, it actually, it still really smells good.
well, enjoy your gin and tonic with water,
Yes, you too, my friend.
and
And
happy
I'll
happy
see you.
coding and happy gin and tonic.
Yeah, let's do this again soon.
Okay.
All right.